up instead of
Yeah, it's coming
the
up.
date. Yeah, I just now while you're waiting.
Oh, well, we are on time, and I think we can get started if you're okay and Nick is okay.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Um, Welcome,
Welcome.
everyone. This is the MPLS Working Group session. I'm going to walk initially over the status update and couple of logistics and pointers, and then I'm going to hand it over to Loa. We are meeting this time for IETF 112. This is still a virtual online meeting, and your chairs for MPLS Working Group, myself, Tariq, Loa, and Nick. Our secretary for MPLS Working Group is Mac Chen, and unfortunately, he won't be able to attend for personal reasons this time. Nick has volunteered to cover for minute taking and monitoring the queue. Thank you, Nick, for that. And Loa as well. He'll be monitoring the queue. So as Loa was mentioning, we have our Note 12. It governs the really, any participation at IETF that we contribute. And we have a couple of BCP pointers here on details this relationship. I encourage everyone who has not already read that to take some time and read it. We do have an extension Note 12 for guidelines for conduct in IETF. And basically, it favors or encourages people. It strives. IETF strives to maintain an environment where people should respect each other, have decency and dignity to each other, and doesn't allow any space for harassment in IETF. And that's basically. I'll let you read through the text, but we do encourage, to follow these practices set out by IETF. In terms of some useful pointers, as usual, Blue Sheet are automatically populated by Meet Echo. Minute taking, Nick and I encourage whoever can contribute to the minute taking, please log into this URL and or you can use the Meet Echo icon on the top, which will take you there as well. One important pointer on this page is that we now have a GitHub repo for the MPLS working group. We have a couple of drafts that the design team has put up on the repo, but I do encourage participants to put their work in progress drafts that other people can open issues on and review and give comments. So it is for us to use if we find it useful. This is our agenda today. We have a couple of minutes to go over more administrative things, and then we'll move on to the working group status report. And then I'll hand over to Loa to talk more about the open design team report, reporting on that, and the activities that the design team is working on. We have 3 other presentations that will follow, and I encourage the speakers to leave some room for questions. This is the time to bash this agenda if you don't like anything on it. So I'll give a pause if anyone wants to comment. Okay, I don't hear anything. So this is a reminder for status reports on working group documents. If you're a co-author of a working group document and have something to share about your document, or that will motivate asking for a slot in the session, please reach out to the chairs and include a report. We expect open issues to be mentioned and next steps update uh, for any working group document. Since last time we met in IETF 111, there hasn't been any new errata reported. Let me move on to the document status now. Since last time, we have a new RFC, RFC 1941. And thank you for the working group and the authors of the RFC and whoever contributed, Shepherd, working group chairs, for making this happen. We have a couple of documents in RFC editor queue. The first one is almost reaching RFC publication. The second is in misref state. It is waiting on another draft. And my understanding is the other draft is waiting on some action from the Shepherd, maybe Loa.
Yes, that's probably true, though in my status file, this was actually waiting for the authors. So I will check up on that. But it's probably an error from me.
Okay, I mean, this is the chance for the authors to comment if they think otherwise. So feel free. I'm not monitoring the queue, but I can speak quickly. Or Nick, if you interrupt me if you feel that somebody wants to talk. We have a document in IESG. The AD has reached out to the authors with some questions. And right now, the AD is waiting on the authors to respond to these questions. So if the authors of this draft are present, please do respond to the AD on their question.
They actually confirmed, Derek, they actually confirmed that they will respond.
Oh, they did?
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Then the status is, yeah, I mean, it's still waiting on them to respond.
Yeah.
The next document we have is a newly adopted document. It's a working group document now. And we have triggered the early code point allocation for this draft. We have received a request and from the authors that it's suitable to do early code allocation. We have a number of working group documents that got updated. Some of them we have a report on, but we do encourage the rest to please fill out the report, send to the list with any open issues and the next plan to take on them. Okay.
You have
I have a
two people in
notification.
queue.
Yeah, I got that notification. So yeah, whoever, Pavan, go ahead.
Regarding RIRCP FRR, I mean, this was, I mean, it was pushed to ISG for publication. I think it just sat there for some time. And I think the ask was to make an up. I mean, the updates are made, but the ask was to go back to the working group and revisit it. I don't know why it's stuck in this state. Is there something that's expected of the authors to? There are no updates ready. What I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it came back from the working group. Actually, it was sent back from the AD or the editor queue back to the working group for taking action. And as far as I know, has the action been taken?
Yeah, my understanding is that I mean, I think the problem there was that the request edits were made, but the authors took a while to get that done. Because of the delay, the ask was to go back to the working group and come back. I mean, that's how I
Yeah.
interpreted that. There are no updates to be made. So, I mean, I think it can progress again. That's my take on it.
Okay, so maybe an email saying that all the action or all the outstanding comments have been cleared and
Sure.
we
Makes sense.
can
Yeah.
progress.
We'll do that.
Loa, do you want to add more on this?
No, I think it's fine.
Thanks.
Okay, we have, I think Rakesh is next in the queue.
Yeah, hi Tarek. Hi everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Hi.
The RFC 6374 SR draft, we sent an email update last week. We believe the document is ready for working group last call.
Okay, thank you for reminding. Somehow we missed that update. Make sure that we do take action on that.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Tarek.
Thank you. Stewart?
So SFL control, I've done as much as I can do without some feedback from other people. So either informal feedback by someone, by people in the working group reading it, or formal feedback by the working group chairs putting it through the MPLS review process and into last call. But I can't do any more work without other people commenting on it.
Loa, you're the shepherd on this. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, no, I think I misplaced this document in wrong status. I think Stuart is right. We can go ahead and see what happens.
Yes, please. I mean, as I say, I don't care whether it's informal feedback, which we can do, which I'll diligently do first, or whether it's one of your formal ones. But someone needs to say something.
The last mail I have on that draft is actually mailed to you from me, asking if there's anything more you want to do, and I haven't seen the response on that.
Oh, I apologize. No, I need you to take the next step, please, to either encourage people to encourage some feedback. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. Shraddha, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so the SREP OAM draft, I had requested for working group last call. We believe there are no further updates on this draft. Yeah, I can. I mean, if I have to send the request again on the mailing list, I will do so. But just wanted to know any other procedures.
I don't think that's necessary. I think I need to check on that, but I think I sent something on that draft in this week.
So Loa, it was about to expire. It had expired actually, which I refreshed today.
Okay, so then we then we are good. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'll move on, and we have a couple of new individual drafts. Some of them, they're not on the agenda today. We encourage the new drafts to be shared with a working group, maybe a short presentation next time.
Actually, Tarek, both of those are on the joint meeting after this.
Oh, okay. I remember the first nibble and the MIAT requirements, right? Yeah, no, but I meant, yeah, that's true. These two are on the joint session. Yeah, maybe I missed to mention that this is the MPLS working group session. We have another session which is joint with PALS.NET working group, and it's the session 3 today. It's in the session 3 today. And these two drafts will be presented there. Okay. We do have the blue drafts highlighted here in blue. They are on the agenda. The last one was moved to the joint session. Okay, again, we have one which is on the agenda from the individual drafts. Okay, I promised a report on this draft in-band PM encapsulation. So there was a version that was reviewed by the MPLS review team, version 1, and the authors took action and addressed all the comments. Version 2 stands as is. There is an open issue, or maybe it's staying in line with what is happening in the MPLS open design team. There is a talk about MPLS indicators and ancillary data being being discussed at open design team. So this will allow a single SPL to carry multiple actions, and the authors think that this is related. This can be an action that that the MEAD indicator can carry. So I encourage, the authors of this draft, personally, I encourage them to participate in the open design team and highlight that this is an action or a function that can be also part of the discussions. This is your chance, the authors, if you want to comment more. But this is my feedback. Okay. I see Kiriti is in the queue. Do you want to go ahead, Kiriti?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, my question was for, I'm hearing an echo. That might be just me. For the LR document.
Your voice is a little bit faint. Can you raise up your voice a bit?
Is this better?
A little bit, but still. Can you do any better?
Okay. The question was for the LR draft. We wanted to make it a working group document. So where are we in that process?
Yeah. Last time we met, Kiriti, on this, there was a action on the office to, at least indicate that. Was there an action on the LR to integrate this with what's happening in MPLS Open Design Team? Is that accurate? Last time we took this note, or maybe I'm missing something.
I missed the question. Is there an action?
Yeah, I think there was, an update that you promised to make to the draft, the LR.
I will check with my co-author. Unfortunately, he just left Juniper, but I will check with him. But from what I understood, it was just to make it a working group document. But I'll check with him. Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. Kiriti or Nick, do you have anything to add on this, the LR draft?
Not right now.
Oh,
No.
Kiriti, I meant Loa or Nick.
No promise.
No, I think it's fine.
Okay, thank you. I'll move on and hand over now to Loa to talk a little bit about the report on MPLS Open Design Team activities.
Okay, I try to do this rather quickly. We normally have done one short report here and another report in the design team. This time it won't be a report in the design team, so this is what you get. When I think back to the start of the work, it seemed to be just a small piece. We needed to do something about organizing the use of the first bytes after the boss. But when looking at it, it's growing and growing, and we're starting to get close to taking decision on some of the issues. So watch out. Next slide, please. So we had quite suddenly 5 or 6 drafts that actually was looking to using the same place in the label stack as we had been using for the ACH, and it turned out that it wouldn't work, so we needed to do something. We had a couple of people that stepped in and said that this is a kind of an architectural question, and we need to be very careful that we don't do anything that paints us into a corner. And at that time, I was a little bit skeptic, but it turns out that they are right. Yeah, we need to architect this very carefully. Next slide, please. So we have a couple of things we discussed and that we mostly agree on. The scoped the activities of the design team to MPLS indicators and ancillary data, and we call this the MIAD project. I'm a little bit disappointed we couldn't make it Meow project, but okay, MIAD project is fine. Indicators carried within the MP label stack to indicate that there are some wanted actions that is not strictly clear from the label itself. Auxiliary data is carried with the packet and is in support for those actions. Auxiliary data has 3 different forms. It can be in-stack data, it can be post-stack data, or it can be, we say, no data. And putting no data there is a little bit of a stretch, but we have cases, so it's there. Next slide, please. Further, we had agreed on that anything that has been specified before must continue to work, whatever the design team does. And we also agree on that after the boss, there can only be one set of auxiliary data. I think that is one of the important things we really has understood over time. Auxiliary data might be complex and have structure. It might not just be one value or something. It could be something more complex. And when we specify new applications, they need to resolve how to carry indicators and auxiliary data without interfering with the earliest existing specifications. One more slide, I think. We have a list of output. We definitely have output from the design team, use cases, requirement, and a framework that has taken time. Things has been changing. And we have solutions draft. Whether they will be design team draft or not is kind of an open question. They might be individual draft that goes through the working group as any other document. I think that was my last slide. Okay, no. So we have a couple of things we need to do in the near time. We should decide on the format and scope of indicators, meaning that what they point at, what they're used for needs to be very clearly specified, and actually there will be rules for how they are specified. We need to specify scope and format of auxiliary data. We have a number of proposals today, some of them that not that clearly outspoken. And we need to ensure backwards and future compatibility. That was the last slide. Kirit, do you are in queue?
Yeah, one thing that I'd like to point out, when we say ensure backward and future compatibility, especially backward compatibility, we have to say that it works as well as it could, not that it works. Because, for example, the first nibble heuristic that says if the first nibble is 4, then it's an IPv4 packet. That's a broken heuristic. And we've mentioned this before. So we want things to work as they used to, but that doesn't mean that they work well. I just want to sort of underline that.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I think everyone agrees to that. It's just how deep into the details do you go at this type of report? We understand that we have things in current specification that does not work well, and they will not work well just because the design team does anything. Things like that. So we say, instead of saying backwards compatibility, work as well as they can. But there is a limit to that also. They need to work.
Okay,
I'm done.
thank you, Loa. I don't see anyone else in the queue, so we'll move on to the next presentation. Let me see if I can find. I think it's Rakesh who's next. You should be able to see the slides. If not, let me know.
Yeah, thanks, Tarek. I see it. You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So, yeah, my name is Rakesh Gandhi, and I'm presenting the draft on the encapsulation of STAMP for pseudo wires in MPLS networks on behalf of the authors listed here. Next slide, please. So the agenda is to look at the requirements and the scope of the draft, the summary of the procedures defined, and the next steps. Next slide, please. So the requirements and scope. This is encapsulation of simple TWAMP stamp test packets for the MPLS pseudo wires. We're looking at both the packets with and without the IP-UDP header. The motivation there is to, because this is for the in-band stamp, so we like to follow the same as data traffic and match the headers. And also need to make sure that we're following the same ECMP path as well as data traffic. The scope is stamp, the 8762, the stamp extensions in RFC 8972. So these are the two new RFCs defined in IPPM, and we are using them for pseudo wire. And P2P at the moment, and in future P2MP MPLS pseudo wires. And next slide,
Rakesh,
please.
would you prefer to take questions towards the end, or I see people in the queue. Just what's your preference?
I'm fine either way. If questions can wait, then sure, or we can take now, depending on the. So, Greg, if you have questions now, we can take it.
Go ahead, Greg.
I have a question about the requirement for encapsulation without IP-UDP header. Because in my opinion, that creates more complexity than it might bring any benefit. So where this requirement is from?
Yeah, so we're trying to send the T1 packets in band with data traffic. So along the same path and with the same header. There is data traffic for pseudowire that has no IP header, and we like to use the same headers as the data traffic with no IP header to avoid any different behavior. The goal here is to measure the accurate latency and packet loss and whatnot. So we're trying to avoid putting a IP header that's not really carried by the data traffic into these probe packets and have a different behavior in data plane.
Well, my understanding is that if in MPLS network we want to be in band with the monitored data flow, well, the recommendation is to use entropy label. So as was discussed, and that's part of the discussion, open design team of this first nibble, but it's more a hack. So I don't really see that there is a apparent need to do without IP UDP header.
Yeah, data is not carrying a IP header in the pseudowire case. Then it makes no sense to say probe packets carry IP header, the fabricated IP header that you had to come up with that can cause the other side issues.
But normally
header, right?
normally we do it for the all other OEM, for BFD, for LSP ping. So it's not something new, and it's not really a problem for operations.
Yeah, so here the goal is to measure the accurate latency. So it's important that the packets look and feel exactly the same as data traffic, right? So
But
coming up with IP header.
It would not really look or feel because, again, imagine that you are doing TDM pseudowire. How your stamp packet will look and feel like TDM.
Yes, if data is not carrying IP header, you have probing that using IP header. It's a different packets, right? It's not.
No,
So Greg and then Rakesh, maybe this is an interesting thing to take to the list. I think it's it's worth answering Greg's question. So please follow up on the list on that, and let's give Stewart a chance to ask his question. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
I was going to largely ask exactly the same question as Greg. I think this needs more bandwidth than we get on the list. I think we probably need a group of interested people to get together and have a voice conversation, as we would have had at a normal IETF. I can't see any reason why it matters that there's an IP UDP address in there, a header in there, because we've been doing, as Greg says, OAM like that for a long time. And since you're using ECMP, well, if it's a pseudo wire, you shouldn't be going and looking around below the stack anyway. So it doesn't matter what is there. It's never going to be interrogated other than as part of a normal pseudo wire operation. Anything else is not going to go down there because you're saying you have to put an entropy label in there. So I don't think you need the complexity of these two cases. Just use one, and we already have one that works, which is using IP UDP.
Yeah, thanks, Stewart. Yeah, so next slide, please. The reference topology here, we have stamp sender S1 and reflector R1. We have pseudowire, and the stamp packets follow the pseudowire. Next slide, please. So this is the case that Stuart and Greg mentioned about using the IP v4 and IPv6 ACH to carry the stamp. So there are existing ACH defined 21 and 57 values for IPv4, IPv6 that's used. And next slide, please. And this is the case where the IP header is not used. And in this case, a new ACH is defined for the session sender. Next slide, please. Again, on the reflector side, same IPv4, IPv6 ACH are used for the reflector packet. Next slide, please. And new ACH is defined if no IP header is used in case of the reflector packet. And next slide, please. So there is no way to distinguish the sender and reflector packet. So in case of IP UDP, the UDP port tells you is a sender packet or reflector packet, and if no IP header is there, then the the channel type tells you it's a sender or reflector packet. Next slide, please. So welcome your comments and suggestions. We weren't sure about the working group, is it MPLS or PALS? And we are requesting a working group adoption for this work. Yeah, thank you. Hi, Stewart.
Go ahead.
So if it's a pseudo-wire, then obviously it belongs in PALS. Question is, are you trying to do MPLS instrumentation as well? In which case, I think you're in a whole new construct.
No, it's really encapsulating for the pseudo-wire. So.
In that case, it belongs in PALS, where all the companion documents were developed, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I personally, okay, so my question is a clarification on the without IP UDP use case. Is it for the case that the pseudo-wire endpoints are not IP capable? Or, I mean, did you clarify that? Is it that
this is for the case where the data traffic is not carrying the IP header. So probes have exact same encoding as the data traffic, of course, different ACH type.
I see. Greg, you're back in the queue.
I wonder, so why it's only applicable to pseudo-wires, because we do have GACH, so which is applicable to MPLS, and if new ACH types are defined, if and when, that seems to be equally applicable to MPLS OSP, no?
Definitely, yeah. If it's applicable to MPLS, then I mean, so I don't know if ACH IANA registry belongs to the MPLS working group. Then the allocation happens in MPLS. So it's not clear to me.
Located by the ACH expert, and they've usually been associated with pseudo-wire, which is where we developed all this in the first place. But it's not a turf issue here. This is about doing the right thing in a simple and consistent way. And I am very confused as to well, I think we need to spend more time talking it through, which is why I'm suggesting a side meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Stewart. Let's do it that way.
Thank you, Rakesh. The next presenter is Yingxin.
Hello, you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. This is Yingzhen. So on behalf of all my co-authors, I'm going to present an update of the young data model for MPLS MSD. Okay. Next slide, please. So here are some recaps. MSD stands for maximum seed depths, which were defined in RFC 8476 and 8491. The MPRS MSD model is an augmentation to the MPRS base model that was defined in 8960. The content of this draft was originally part of RFC 9020, the Young Data Model for segment routing. It was decided during IESC review of that RFC to split the content, the part about MSD as a separate draft, because it's more characteristic of MPRS. Hence, we have this small module here. Next slide, please. This slide shows the updated tree diagram. Compared with the old one on the right side, you can see that the major change we did was to make the interface MSD status to augment the MPRS interface instead of all interfaces. So the authors believe this makes more sense since when the interface is running MPRS, right? So it has MSD. There. Next slide, please. So besides that, we remove the grouping max seed depths because no other module is really using it. We updated the security considerations with small details, plus editorial changes. The authors here would like to thank Tom Patch specifically for his review and comments. Next slide, please. So next steps. Of course, we like to address comments if there are any coming in the near future. And the authors believe the draft is ready for working group adoption. So the question to the chairs is, can we start an adoption call after this IETF? That's it. Thank you.
So to me, there is a the next steps is kind of ambivalent. You say you want to collect and address comments, okay, and when that is done, you want to do the working group adoption, or are you saying that you're ready to do working group adoption and then address comments as they come in later?
Well, so the comments we received so far have already been addressed. Of course, we welcome people to review and send in more comments. But since this part of the document, the module itself was a split of the segment routing model, it was already intensely reviewed there. So I personally am not expecting many new comments coming in. So I think we should start the working group adoption call.
Okay, I understand you. I think my real question is, are the two bullets on the next step slides, are the first one a condition for going further, or it seems like what you're saying now is actually you want to go to working group adoption?
Yes, I like to study working group adoption, and meanwhile, if during the adoption process or after the adoption, we will continue to address the comments. I don't think they conflict with each other.
Maybe not. I
Unless,
just
yeah, unless there is strong objection about adopting this draft.
I don't really think there is. I think it would be better if the last slide said that we request working group adoption, and further comments will be addressed during the working group process. I think that's yeah, okay.
Oh, okay, yeah. If you want, I can even change the slide, upload a new version.
Probably not necessary. We have it in the discussion. It's fine.
Yeah. Hope that doesn't cause more confusion.
I have a question for you, Izen. I'll go back to slide 3. I see that you are doing the MSD per interface.
Yes.
And per node as well, or is it? Yeah, I see per node and per interface. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
And is the per node the lowest common denominator? Is that the thinking?
Yeah, so you can see actually right now, both for the node and for the link, they are read-only parameters. So it really depends on the implementation. If I remember right, the definition of node 1 should be the lowest number from, like, if you have 10 links, you pick the lowest one. But really for this module, we just report what the implementation giving us. It's not really a configuration. Yeah.
Yeah, and as far as I remember, the whole point is the ingress will use this this attribute when it's doing some computation or path constraint. IGP has, I'm not sure if IGP has defined, I know they have defined per capability per node, but I'm not sure per interface or per link. So what is the utility of the per inter? I'm questioning the utility of reporting per interface. Is it useful? Is it something that IGP folks also have you're planning to do? Have you researched it?
So after we created this new small module here in MPRS, we also create a separate one for ICP, for ISS and OSPF each. So it's pretty much the same thing. It's just inside the ICP module. ICP only, populate such information, right? Yeah, there is for example, OSPF, SR, MSD, something that
per link or per node?
Yeah.
Per link and per
both.
node? For both? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my question. Jeffrey, Jeff, I think you're in the queue. You want to ask? Go ahead.
Thank you. Ying-Jen, question for you, the authors. Has there been discussion about having a return value for when the node understands what an MSD is, but it doesn't know what it is for some reason?
Sorry, I didn't get your question. The node get the value but doesn't understand what it is?
So the node is of a software lineage that understands what MSD means, but for some reason it is unable to determine the value.
So right now, like I just mentioned, this one is a read-only, right? So it really depends on, I guess for most vendors, this depends on the hardware. So whatever the value reported from the lower level, the hardware level. And the software is just, you can only use what information available.
Okay, I don't think you understand. I will send my message to the list.
Sure. Yeah, maybe I didn't. Yeah, I didn't get your question, I guess.
I'm building my questions on my question on the next question on top of Jeff's question. You have MSD type there. Is that to indicate that you can have a label type and then a byte? You can do by per byte or per label. And why is there a segment there? Why is it the label depth? Because you're talking about MPLS.
Where is there a label? The
you
MSC
have,
tab is actually.
so you have maximum
one?
segment depth. I mean, if we are talking about MPLS, it's label depth, right?
Yes, it's the label depth. Yeah.
Okay, so then you more suitable is label depth. Then why do you have a
Oh,
type and value?
the tab is defined in the RFC 8276. And it's also possible the entropy label rate depths. Not only just how many, so far, future there might be more depths, but right now, if I remember right, there are the number of maximum label you can rate. Also where the entropy label depths you can rate.
In Shannon, Tarek, we actually running on Turles time now, so we have to take this to the list and let Turles start.
Yeah, AC is in the queue as well as Torles. So I think Torles is going to present. AC, we have to apologize. I think we're running out of time. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm gonna approve Torles. I think you should be able to share.
All right, thank you very much. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the deterministic QS for the MPLS data plane considerations. I have one draft that I'm trying to promote to get into DetNet. There's also work beyond that. I really would love to see more people from MPLS side to get involved in DetNet and see how we can get that draft adopted. And I think the reason for that is what I wanted to high level up here, the details of the draft. MPLS I'm going to present in DetNet, and I did present in interim. So right now, the MPLS forwarding plane only allows to support per hop per flow bounded latency solutions, which means that for every flow on every hop, we need to instantiate a shaper or interleaved regulator. So on any MPLS P router. So there are different shapers. There's RFC 2212, and there's IEEE TSN asynchronous traffic shaper. But the fundamental issue, of course, is that this is highly undesirable, in our typical MPLS service provider designs, which means segment routing networks, where we really want to have per hop, per flow stateless behavior, but instead source routing, so that we have scalability, low churn of the control plane, and so on. That doesn't work with these because they basically, every shaper needs to be instantiated from an MPLS label, SRP label there in the label stack, and there is the total number of these shapers that you would need could easily get into the tens of thousands in a large service provider networks. And I think we've got good experience that even this number of just routing states or so is something that we really don't want when we can avoid it. There is another, more application-centric issue, and that is that these shaper solutions do introduce the maximum amount of jitter, because as soon as there is no competing traffic, the queuing latency is 0, and with the maximum amount of competing traffic, you have the maximum queuing latency. So, and this is really highly undesirable, especially in a lot of industrial applications, as we've learned over the years. So really the industry would like to have a lower jitter solution, and I did present in DetNet example reasons for that, including the need to otherwise have more clock synchronization and more difficult end user devices. So now, what options do we have to overcome this? And there are really two solutions, right? One is, I think, without extension changes to the MPLS packet header processing, And that's really the draft that I think we should start looking into first, that I have in DetNet, which is this, TCQF, which is per hop, per flow stateless, very low jitter, independent of the path property. So the jitter doesn't go up with the number of hops or the per hop latency. And it purely relies on using the traffic class value in the MPLS label to indicate, the additionally necessary parameter to enable this QS, and it is per flow stateless. So we need 3 to 5 of those TC values. So I think this is really the only short-term option for no MPLS packet header changes. And it is not vaporware, but instead it was validated in a 2,000 kilometer wide area network with 100 gigabit or faster high-speed WAN routers, and fairly simple QS FPGA code on the QS chips there. Now, when we do think about extensions and changes to the MPLS packet header and processing, there are really various options, and I think those would all be interesting to look into, but it's really dangerous to think that we could standardize, non-extensible solutions now, and I don't really think we know exactly how to make them extensible now, because we didn't have the discussion, right? So, because I think there are also more QS things for both for DetNet and beyond and MPLS, where we want to have better QS, and so it really goes into the need to have more of a design team for that. And it would be great if we wouldn't have to do that only for MPLS, because the same type of issues really exist in the very same way for IPv6. So here's just a little excerpt, how that text cyclic queuing and forwarding works. It's pretty much based on the 12-year-old TSN solution. Cyclic queuing and forwarding packets are simply forwarded bucket by bucket, hop by hop, into cycles, and then that effectively means that the latency on a hop per basis is exactly one such cycle latency, and of course the jitter is then the cycle jitter, which can be 100 microseconds. And the main thing that needed to be done to make this technology work for large networks was to really put the cycle number into the packet, so that in TSN a packet is received into the cycle based on its timestamp. And obviously, when you have latency on links and when you have jitter, that doesn't work. So that's why the cycle number needs to be in the packet. That's why we need to find something in a packet header to do it, and that's why a small cycle number from 1 to 3 is kind of the best thing we can get out of the existing forwarding plane with the traffic class bits. So now, and we also are doing, pseudocode, so it hopefully should be easy to understand how easy this ultimately is in the forwarding plane, what needs to be done, and that it would obviously work exactly the same way, not only for MPLS, but also for the IP data plane in DetNet with 3 to 5 DSCP values, which isn't really, a strong, priority for us now, but which obviously gives safety in terms of saying that this can be done without data plane changes for both of our data planes in DetNet. Okay, so I was talking about, extensible QS header, and here's a little bit kind of that first round highlight of what all the issues are that I think we haven't tackled with QS, DetNet, and beyond, right? So the first thing is that the pre-auth, we've done that for MPLS, but not for IP. So, given how in the MPLS design team there were thoughts of, having headers that would be equally able to attach to MPLS and to IP, something like for pre-auth would make a lot of sense for that. The bounded latency, the alternatives to the TCQF solution, there are other alternatives. I myself presented one new thing into a research conference, but there have been a lot of ideas in that space in the past 30 years, and they all may need some different but a lot more new packet header than just 3 bits. So for example, my solution would require a timestamp 16-bit, a priority, which might be a sequence of 4-bit values, and other solutions might want to have other packet header extensions. And then there are beyond DetNet things where really we haven't had really good discussions. The most obvious one from the pragmatic side is just the DSCP side. The beer header, for example, which was designed to support both MPLS and IP, already has DSCP. That makes it a lot easier when you're passing IP multicast over MPLS, not to have to bother with the differences between TC and DSCP. So that would also be very lovely to have for operational simplification in an MPLS extension header. And there are other, cool things. So, for example, the ECN stuff in L4S, they're struggling with just 2 ECN bits. If there were more, this would be a lot easier. There is, for bandwidth management, there were really good drafts where you have a weighted bandwidth parameter. And so I think there's a lot more. And the question is, what scope would we want to take into account initially? But, how could we make, MPLS extension headers easily enough extensible, right? Do we, like in IPv6, need to create for every new parameter a new extension header? Do we use a TLV or so on, right? So I think those are the questions that would be lovely to tackle more, but we need more QS people in there and not only the MPLS header folks. Right, so summary would really be lovely to see one really well-working proving service provider class bounded latency solution for DetNet with MPLS that's usable now. I think that's our draft that we have. So it would be great to see support for that, or questions if you don't understand it. But then, of course, it would also be great to start the longer-term QS effort to go along with the MPLS design team effort. And I guess, the reaching out to the transport area and the QS folks there is certainly a big part of that. And I'll see what I can get done there. Yep, and that's it. Thank you very much.
So tell us, what do you want to get from presenting this here in the MPLS working group?
Right. So I think it was, as I said in the summary, right? So the one thing was for the MPLS folks to try to understand this problem, which is that if we want to have DetNet be a future driver for MPLS networks, we need to have a bounded latency solution that fits service provider requirements. And that is that draft, right? So I'm looking for support for that draft, even if it's obviously, happening in DetNet, but I think the kind of more use case in terms of representation of the interests of service provider networks with MPLS, that's to be found here in the MPLS working group. That's why I'm kind of, you're kind of the network owner working group. So that's just, please come to DetNet and work on this. And the second part was really about my thoughts on, what that we have a complex space of problems for us to solve before converging on, I think, more extensible, better QS extension headers for MPLS in the MPLS design team. And that we shouldn't think that any single extension piece that we've seen now might be something that is valid long-term, but that, extensibility in an efficient way might be the first important thing to think about for QS functions in the MPLS design team.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have one person in the queue, but we're out of time. So if this is quick, Uma, go ahead. Otherwise, I think we have to take it to the list.
It's very quick, actually. So one comment I had was it's a very loaded topic, definitely. Torles, you're comparing with CQF and ATS stuff. So basically, that is need a lot of understanding of TSN technologies and also the DetNet requirements to differentiate this. But the question relevant here is you're asking for the TCN bits 3 to 5 for the CQF stuff, right? So it happened in the TSV working group also for the L4S. We don't have that many bits, right? We have only 3 bits here. So how do you get 5 values out of it?
Values, yes, it's 3 bits. That's 8 values, and I'm saying we need 3 to 5 values out of the 8.
Yeah, even getting 1 or 2 there itself is getting difficult, right? So that was happened in TSV working group discussions during L4S. So think about it. So you might have to go to MPLS DT for extensible stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the
but I think that's a question of, you know, how are you already using the TC values in MPLS networks, and what is the important differentiation that gives you, you know, a business value.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. And also
Okay.
the comparison of ATS and CQF is extremely complicated. If you put a separate session in the DT or .NET, will be useful. Thanks.
Oh yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any closing comments from the working group chairs before we adjourn? Loa, Nick?
No, I don't think so. We have a meeting in half an hour, so.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone who attended. We'll see you soon, either next session or next IETF. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you.